My name is Bob O'Neill. I'm an architect based in Cumbria. We work on projects across the whole county, both in the National Park, outside the National Park, Eden Valley and the Yorkshire Dales National Park. The practice specialises in the sensitive renovation, repair and alteration to older buildings, such as this one. And we also work on contemporary elements within the context of working on older buildings as well, so modern interventions. We were very fortunate to win the RIBA Conservation Award in 2012, and we've gone from strength to strength really. We just love what we do. We have some lovely projects. We did lots of archival research and we looked at old maps, some of the old tithe plans and some of the Enclosure Acts plans, and we found one from 1820 for this area, and it was really interesting. The building itself dates from around about the turn of the 18th century. We were able to find that out through archival research, and we did some evolution plans for the building as well when we did our survey and we got our floor plans drawn. That said, the collection of buildings here is older, and we found some research to suggest that William Fallowfield was the farmer here around about the 1700s, and the farmstead then developed and grew. So that the two cottages that were originally the building adjoin William Fallowfield's farmhouse, which is the end of which you can see on the end there. Although it's one property now, it was originally two cottages, and at some point in the 1900s it appears to have been combined into a single cottage. In the 18th century, early 19th century, the property had a series of alterations and extensions. There's a barn dating from the 18th century, and then at the back we've got a series of outrigger alterations on the back that's fairly typical of traditional buildings of this kind. So when our clients commissioned us to work with them on this property, we found a building that was charming. It's a beautiful setting, and on the face of it kind of seemed okay, but then actually when you took a closer look and you did a little bit more invasive work, actually there were some systematic problems with the building. It's a traditional building constructed of random rubble masonry with a rendered south side, as you can see, beneath a graduated slate roof, and we found that there were sort of the problems that you typically find on a building that may have been poorly renovated in the 20th century. Non-breathable materials had been applied over the surfaces of the walls. There were serious issues with damp and condensation. The windows had failed. The sort of utility, kitchen, wet rooms, there was a series of mould issues and things like that. And just the general internal air quality was very poor. This was because of the condensation issues to do with the non-appropriate materials in the renovations that had been taking place in the 20th century. Fundamentally, there was also a big issue that the entire property was reliant on oil. So it was just drinking oil, and we have a very unsustainable building. Part of our strategy was to actually look at how we can decarbonise the fuel source, and we can overhaul the building with a sustainable renovation. That said, it's a listed property, so we had to dovetail all of our work with the conservation officer, work closely with them to ensure that we complied and we're doing the appropriate thing, which we do. And also, we wanted to create a building that was sustainable and could fully address climate change and the 21st century. So we were looking at a strategy for incorporating renewables. So the main challenges for a property like this: cost control, cost management, basically trying to get a good handle on what the cost might be for the client and then managing that cost throughout the build. Another challenge was the fact that it's a listed building, so we need to get consents, which is right, get the appropriate consents in place, and we need to respect what's significant about the building and try and celebrate that. Another big challenge is really the known unknowns. So you know that you're going to find something, you don't quite know what it's going to be, you've got a feeling, particularly in things like the floors. So we took out, or we were proposing to take out the existing floors, and we're thinking, well, we're going to find some underpinning here, or we're going to find a need for underpinning. So that's interesting, and you need to have a fair contingency to allow for that. And another one is integration of renewables. And we have a listed building where it is aesthetically pleasing, and we need to try not to detract from that with how we integrate our solar panels or air source heat pump, for example. In light of the challenges and to address some of the issues that we'd identified, we put together a strategy hand in hand with the client, and early engagement with the contracting team as well. So a local builder, Seamus from Construction, is somebody I've worked with in the past. We spoke to him quite openly about doing the work and how we might manage the contract and the cost management of that. And we talked about some of the systems and some of the solutions that we wanted to integrate. And we engaged early with people like Ecological Building Systems to talk about how we might use some of their air tightness systems because we wanted to address the air quality in the building. So concurrent with the management of air quality in the building, we also looked at thermally upgrading. So we could make some good wins there. We could double glaze all of the windows, replace all of the fenestration. The fenestration was of no significance. It's fairly recent anyway, and it's single glazed and poorly executed. So that was a comfortable, easy win. But we also then chose to thermally upgrade the envelope of the building. We did that using a wood fibre system on the inside, which we then skimmed in a lime plaster as well. So that was one of our approaches to the thermal envelope. We have a series of complex roofs, and we worked very closely with the technical teams from our suppliers, like Ecological Building Systems, to ensure that our U values and our condensation management was in place. There's 6 different types of roof with this property, most of which we inherited, I should say. I didn't make it overcomplicated on purpose, but we have cold roofs, warm roofs, ventilated roofs, non-ventilated roofs, a flat roof which has got a cedar roof, that kind of thing. So we really looked at that in a lot of detail to try and make sure that we could overcome any bumps on the journey. So a key component part of our approach was to look at the renewables, how these might work in conjunction with what we were doing elsewhere in the building. We decided to put in an air source heat pump, which we were able to do because we significantly thermally upgraded the external envelope. Alongside the air source heat pump, we're using solar panels as well. So we've put 16 solar panels on this roof. As you can see, the sun is just trying to come out. They produce about 6 kilowatts of energy a year, and that's equivalent to about 1.2 tonnes of CO2, which is great. Alongside that, we also have an MVHR, which redistributes warm air from other parts of the building and helps with the thermal performance of the building and internal air quality. We've adopted an holistic approach to the whole building. You can't just add an air source heat pump without improving the thermal performance. You can't just put solar panels on the roof and then not address issues to do with how the actual the energy you're using is being used. So none of these components can work in isolation, and so it's a bit like a jigsaw really. We're trying to put them all together to create the final product, which is what we have. So we're now in the kitchen, and this space has been completely transformed. When we arrived, this kitchen was a rather dark, dank, horrible space with a ceiling down here, and the structure was completely tired. There's lots of issues with breathability of materials, lots of condensation issues. So we stripped it right back to the bare basics of the original structure, the original fabric. We introduced a new roof, and we pitched the ceiling up to follow the roof line. Introduced roof lights in that roof so that we could bring daylight into here. It's north facing, and so that was a big factor really. And what you can't see is behind these lovely finishes are lots of interesting materials in themselves. So we have a lime green solo lime plaster here, and behind there we have wood fibre insulation. Around our new windows we've Contiga air tightness tapes all the way around the windows, and there's so much thought takes place behind the materials and the detailing to make sure that actually you end up with the performance that you'd want at the end, which is an airtight building with controlled air movement. In the ceiling, we have a pitched ceiling where we have wood fibre insulation between the rafters, and then we've got wood fibre insulation and an Intello Plus air tightness membrane beneath there as well. So in here we have an incredibly airtight envelope with our seals and tapes around our windows and doors, our air tightness membrane in our roof, but we then need to think about how we ventilate and how we extract the air from the kitchen. So we have an MVHR system in our ceiling, and we have a recirculating cooker hood. That prevents the cooker hood extraction from pulling too much from the MVHR system. So we're looking at a completely transformed space, and I really love this space. I think the mix of materials, the modern contemporary maple ply mixed with the traditional lime renders and mortars and plasters. We've got a resin floor and a lime pointed wall up here as well, so we're really chuffed. We made a significant improvement to the thermal performance of the building, and that's been hard to achieve. There's been a lot of planning and a lot of energy and time went into doing that, but it's been well worth it. In terms of the air movement and the air tightness of the building, we had it tested a couple of weeks ago now. I wasn't there, but the test was 3.4, which is, I think, an incredible result considering the complexity of this build. And I actually found out after the air test results from the contractor that the stove hadn't been installed when they did the test. So actually the true data is it's significantly better than that. I think we're really happy with the project, and crucially also the client is really happy, which is great to hear, and it's really nice to have that positive feedback at the end of every project. It's been a long journey. It was a year on site, and so inevitably during that period of time there's highs and there's lows, aren't there? But certainly overall the project's been a real success. We're really happy. It's achieved the goals that we wanted to do. Its carbon footprint is significantly reduced. We've now got renewable technology here which is working effectively. And crucially inside it's beautiful. We've managed to get a lot of natural daylight into these spaces. We've managed to create a lot of interesting spaces from what was previously a fairly haphazard plan. We've rationalised that and we've introduced interesting spaces within there. And you know, some of the finishes, I think one of our favourite aspects of the whole project are the finishes. You know, we have this beautiful lime plaster. We've got some engineered oak floor here, which looks great alongside there. And then in the room, in the dining room there, we've got some of the reclaimed sandstone flags. And they all work really well and they work in harmony together. So we're super happy. We're really chuffed with the outcome. My hints or my tips, should I say, for anybody that's thinking of a project like this would be to engage with an architect early. Have a lot of time in mind for planning and giving that architect the time and the scope to actually develop everything with you to create an holistic approach of the entire building. Be mindful that you need to allow the time for the professionals to speak to the technical teams for all of the supply chain and to get the contracting teams on board early as well. And then everybody can have engagement, everyone can then work together to deliver the project for you. I would also say you commission your architect to work all the way through, because there are always details on site that always need a bit of dialogue, a conversation, referrals to the technical team like ecological building systems or something like that, and say, look, this is different to how we expected, how we're going to overcome this barrier. And actually be prepared to say, look, you're going to have a beautiful building at the end of this. It's going to perform wonderfully. It's going to have a low impact on the environment, and it's going to be a beautiful place in which to live. And maybe say to yourself, well, a lot of the money goes into things that you don't necessarily see but are going on in the background. So you may have less footprint, for example, than a big new extension. But be accepting of the fact that if your architect can design some interesting spaces within the current footprint and your buildings and your systems all work together really well, you've got a great result. So another useful hint for people thinking about a project like this is to engage with your supply chain. And I would suggest ecological building systems are a good starting point. Many suppliers will just sell you something, but actually you need more than that. You need a conversation about what you're buying and how it works in relationship with everything else that you're doing. So we're very lucky here in that we have their support and their input throughout, and I'd encourage people to do that. Okay, so to conclude, I just want to say a big thank you. Thank you to our great clients. Thank you to our contracting team, Seamus of Inca Construction, and his great team, and the subcontractors. We had Chris Dadley doing some fantastic air source heat pump and underfloor heating work for us, and Scott doing the fantastic electrics. Also our supply chain, Ecological Building Systems, they were great working with those guys, and we're really happy with the outcome. And I think I'd encourage anybody, if they want to do a project like this, get in touch.